Okay, Be'ezrat Hashem, Na'aseh v'natzliach. I'd like to welcome you to Ironside Lunch and Learn. This week's Parasha is a double header, Behar Bechukotai. And again, in order to understand what's going on in the Parasha, let's just focus. Where are we in? We're in the spiritual envelope between Pesach and Shavuot, the time that we're doing character refinement, spiritual refinement, preparing ourselves for Matan Torah. And here we are learning the Parashiot of Shavua, and we want to see how is that connected to this time period. So, very interesting. When it talks in the beginning of the Parasha, it talks about the Shemitah, it talks about the Yovel. And we know that the Shemitah is a very interesting practice. It's where the farmer or the agriculture busies himself for 6 years working the land, and on the 7th year he takes a break, and he does that for 7 cycles. And on the 7th cycle there's a jubilee, a yovel, that on the 50th year, once again the land rests, all the slaves are freed. All the shtarim, or anything that had some sort of documents that were outstanding, all reset themselves and go back into the original owners. A very, very interesting concept, this concept of Shemitah, and very, very interesting concept, the concept of Yovel, and overall the hidden character inside all of these parashiot is the number 7. The number 7 is, if you could give a number to this parasha, I would give it the number 7. All it does is it talks about the 7th, after 6 years, the 7th year, 7 of 7. The Omer that we're in right now, we count 7 weeks. And then we get to Matan Torah, and if you even look further into the creation of this world, you see that the number 7 shows up in a lot of different places. I mean, all the way from the time of Bereshit, we have the 7 days, the 6 days of creation, and Shabbat, the 7th day when Hashem rested. All throughout the Bible, all throughout the Torah, there's many, many hidden secrets when certain things are mentioned specifically 7 times. Whether it's in Sefer Bereshit, when it says Kitov 7 times, or in Noah, when it talks about the land 7 times, or when it talks with Avraham, or with Moshe Rabbeinu, many different places in the Torah that you can go and you see the number 7, or Luchot HaBrit. Luchot HaBrit were mentioned 2 separate times, one for the first Luchot, one for the second Luchot, and each time that they were mentioned, each time the word Luchot HaBrit was 7 times. And there's all these hidden biblical secrets about the repetition of 7, but even in our daily lives, when we see that not only do we have it in the 7 days of the week, we have it in the 7 chords of music, we have it in the 7 colors of the rainbow, we have it in the Shemitah, which we're learning in this week's Parasha, we have it in the counting of the Omer, we have it in the 7 Sheva Olamot, and the 7 worlds, and the 7 heavens. There's so many different places where you see this number come up. If you read the Zohar, it always talks about Shvi'i, Shvi'i, Shvi'i. What is this concept of the number 7? It's like a cyclical number that keeps coming up in many, many different parts of our lives. In this week's Parasha, we see a small sampling of it. Be'ezrat Hashem, by the end of this lesson, we'll see what the number 7 means to us. Let's start with this week's Parasha. Pasuk Chet in Perek Chafhei says, "V'safarta lecha sheva Shabbatot shanim, sheva shanim, sheva pe'amim, v'hayu lecha yemei sheva Shabbatot hashanim, tesha v'arba'im shana." This is talking about how we have to count 7 weeks, and then it says how we have to count 7 years, and we have to count it 7 times. And after we do all that, we come to a 49 year, which leads us to the to the Jubilee, ועברת שופר תורה בחודש השביעי, בעשור לחודש, ביום הכיפורים תביא שופר בכל ארציכם. Talks about the 7th month. And on the 7th month, we also know that we have over there Yom Kippur, and we also have over there Sukkot. There's so many hidden concepts behind this number 7, but without getting too spread out, let's just concentrate on one thing, which is the subject of this week's Parasha. This week's Parasha talks about the Shemitah. So we know the Shemitah is a very interesting thing. You work the land for 6 years. On the 6th year, we ask the farmer, the agriculturer, to say, take a break, take 1 year off, go learn Torah, come back in a year, and your field can't be touched. Anyone who wants to go on that field, they can take anything from it, they can go on it. It's almost like you have to do it in hefker. You almost have to let go of your property, and all you're concerned with for that year is to go get closer to Hashem. You've been working the land for 6 years, now 1 year to work for Hashem. And after the 7th year, you start the whole process. And between the 6th year and the 1st year, there's almost like a 2.5 to 3 years gap of between your last crop and your next crop. So you could imagine that's a long time without actual product. So anyone who's in business, can you imagine you tell a businessman to say, you know what, work for 6 years and just take a break. And in about 2.5 years, come back into the picture, you start to sell product. Who would do that? Who would do that nowadays? You'd have to have a tremendous amount of emunah that God is going to be able to provide for you. Well, the last year, after he reaps the crop, he can't work the land anymore. Then you have a full year off, and then the year that you're allowed to, what do? You plant, and how long does that take? So there's a whole time period before the last time you were able to reap the fruits, and the next time that you're supposed to, there's a big gap depending on the product that you use, depending on the type of vegetable or fruit that you're growing. So the obvious question is going to be, Manochal, what are we going to eat? How can we be off for such a long period of time? So the rabbis tell us, Manochal, Mem, Nun are the first letters of each one, which Mem and Nun comes to Man. What do we know man? Man is the food that comes from the heavens. What does that signify? Parasha mishamayim. When you have that question of manochal, what am I going to eat? Take those 2 first letters and think about man. Just the same way that God provided for the Jewish people in the middle of the desert and gave them everything that they needed, similarly, He will do the same for you in your life. But you can see that it's a huge exercise of emunah, this Shemitah. And basically, this also served as a reset for the land. The land needs to rest. It's been working hard for 6 years. It needs to relax. It needs to enrich itself all over again in order for it to be a viable piece of land to keep growing fruit. You can't just, use it to the point where it's exhausted. You have to let the land rest. And the same thing goes for the farmer. He needs to rest. And not only that, people that work the land, these are very special people. They wake up very early in the morning and they go to the field and they're very invested with the earth and the ground and the quality of the earth, the quality of the seed, the quality of the fruit, the weather, the rain. They plant something tiny like a seed in the ground and they watch it grow and it buds and it goes to a bush, to a tree, eventually to a fruit. It's a process. This is no instant gratification. These people are very much connected to the earth, and they wake up very early and they go to sleep very late, just trying to make this agricultural lifestyle a successful one. So when you ask a person like that to just stop, it's also resetting that person from his daily grind to finally having some time to connect to Hashem. Because the number one excuse in the world for everyone that doesn't want to get religious or doesn't want to learn or doesn't want to get spiritual, I'm working. I'm busy working. So even if you're going to say, you know what, I'm working, on the 7th year, you have no excuse. On the 7th year, you're off. And during this time, it's a reset for the land and reset for the Adam, for the person. What's the connection between those two is we know that the human being came from what place? He came from the ground. Man was formed from earth, and God blowing air into that formed body made from Adama, from Afar, and that's how the human being came to life. So the same way that the earth needs to rest for 7 days, similarly, the man that comes from earth needs to rest on the seventh day, as well as the year. How do we see that? The land rests for 1 year. That's typically 365 days. If you make the calculation of a man resting, when does a Jewish man rest? When do the Jewish people rest? It's on Shabbat. That's the 7th day, right? How many Shabbatot are in a year? 52. How many years is it for the Shemitah? 7. 7 times 52 comes out to be 364. 364, add the Jubilee year, that's 365. So you see that the person that keeps Shabbat throughout a 7-year cycle, he actually gets to keep what? The Shemitah, just like the land. And as a matter of fact, the word Shemitah, the numerical value, the gematria of Shemitah is 364. So 364 is the word, 364 is the Shabbatot, total amount of Shabbatot that we take off, and 364 is actually the year that we rest for the Shemitah. Now, we're in a very special time period where we're counting 7 days, 7 times. We're in the Omer. You know, there's a whole concept of counting. That counting, it closes in subject. How would I say it? Magbil. It creates like some sort of encloses the ayin. The way the ayin hara is that it's able to control something. How do you control something? If you're able to look at something and it's within your vision, then the ayin hara can work on whatever is within your vision. Same thing as when you give it, like when you classify it. Like for example, if I'm able to count $10, the fact that I locked it into being exactly $10, I can put ayin hara on that, or someone could put ayin hara on a number. That's why numbers are actually, notice that in Judaism we count our numbers with letters in order not to have ayin hara on it. But actual digits, the actual numbers, it's not a Jewish thing. I don't know who exactly came up with the writing of numbers, but in Judaism we would say 1 is Aleph, Bet is 2, 400 is Tav, 5,778 is Tav Shin Ayin Chet, which is the year that we're in. That's how we say numbers, with letters. So we are right now in a time with that, that's why we don't count the Jewish people, right? When we're in a minyan, we don't say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're missing 2. What do we say? We say, we have a pasuk that we say. A good pasuk to say, if you were trying to count 10 people in the room, is Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz. That's 10. The bracha Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz is a good way to count 10 people in a room without having to count. So, if that's true, if counting allows the ayin hara to be instilled on something or someone, then how is it possible that we're counting right now 7 days, 7 times? And not only that, we count 7 years to 7 times to create the Jubilee, 49 years up to 50, and then to Shavuot, and we count it. How do we do that? How does ayin hara not control us during these times? So anything that has to do with Kedusha doesn't have that power. The ayin hara has no power to control it. So right now when we're counting the Omer, even though that we're counting the days, the counting of it is not allowing any of the ayin hara to go on it. This is more or less the concept of Shemitah, and later on in the Parasha, it talks about something else that's 7, which is the 7th day, which is Shabbat. And the famous pasuk over there, that Sheshet Yamim Te'aseh Avodah. It says over there that the work will be done for you when you keep Shabbat. So you always want to, so the famous question is, why was it said that the work will be done for you? Shouldn't you say that the work will be done? Or Sheshet Yamim Ya'aseh Avodah? Sheshet Yamim Ne'esta Avodah? Like the work was done, or it will be done. What does it mean, Te'aseh? It will be done. So the rabbis are telling us that the way that you keep Shabbat, the way that you keep the 7th day, that's what determines how the work will get done for the rest of the week. Think about that. The way you keep Shabbat, the quality of your Shabbat keeping, is what determines the success of the rest of the week. So let's think about how upside down that is between Jewish thinking and Gentile thinking. So in Judaism, God tells you, you want to be successful in life, you want the work to be done, you want things to be done properly and done with a blessing and done on a level where everything is, you have the biggest chance to make a huge amount of parnasa. Take a day off. Take a day off. And on that day, relax. Eat, sleep, enjoy yourself, meet with family, go to shul, sing, study Torah. Take a day off, have the best time of your life, and the rest of the week, the job will get done for you. Which is ironic because regularly in life, what do they tell you? You put in the work, you make the money. How do you put in the work? Oh, more hours, more days, no sleep. That's how you make money. There's a lot of people that are convinced that if they don't work on the weekends, they're not going to make money. If their store is not open on Shabbat, they're not going to make money. Meanwhile, it's completely the opposite. Completely the opposite. Should you take off Shabbat and keep it properly and enjoy yourself on that day? Hashem says, you want to make a lot of money? Take a day off. And people are having a hard time. How could that be? I'm going to close my store on the weekend and you're going to tell me I'm going to make more money? I don't believe you. I'm sorry. I have 1,000 people walking in the street on Saturday, and on Tuesday, maybe 200, 250. My chances of making money are slim. So how is it possible? How is it possible that a person who wants to be a hard worker can be less successful than the person who takes off? I'll give you an example. Give you a couple of stories of chizuk. I have a friend of mine who used to own a store in Key West. And on Key West, there's no better example than weekend business. There's business only on the weekend. During the week, it's a ghost town, especially if it's not a season. If it's not the season. My friend had a souvenir store over there, and across the street was another Jew, also with a souvenir store. Basically, they were next door neighbors, one across the street from one another. So, one guy started to get more religious, started to keep Shabbat, started to keep Torah, mitzvot, and maasim tovim. And he came to the classic question, to the classic fork in the road. Do I keep Shabbat or do I not keep Shabbat? Do I keep the store open or do I not keep the store open? Not only that, do I keep the store open in a town where weekend business is the only business? Or I don't. What do I do? Well, eventually he got very strong in his Avodat Hashem, and he decided to keep Shabbat. He closed the store. He closed the store in Key West on Shabbat. The first few weeks were very hard to digest and to understand that he's actually doing this. But he said, I took a decision, I decided to keep Shabbat, I'm going for it. And as the Pasuk says, Yeshuat Hashem keheref ayin, when Hashem wants to save you, it can happen in a blink of an eye. And wouldn't you know it, that he kept Shabbat. He comes to open up the store the following Sunday. And that Sunday, he was busier than he's ever been in the history of him being in business. His friend across the street knocked down 2 packs of cigarettes, just smoking, standing outside, waiting for clients to come in. And he was able to make 5 times more than what he typically makes on a weekend on that Sunday. And he went to continue to say that it actually started to be like that every single week. He says there were Tuesdays that he would make more than on the weekend. There'd be a Wednesday where he'd make way more than he would on the weekend. And later on, when the 2 neighboring stores would speak to one another, the guy that was opening on Shabbat would report more than once it was a slow day. Nothing major. Statistically, you'd see that Shabbat business didn't even compare to the Sunday business or the middle of the week business of the guy that kept Shabbat. Because the way that you keep Shabbat, that's the way that the rest of the week is going to be. Sheshet yamim te'aseh melacha. That's what we learned from that pasuk. You know, when it comes to Parasha, what do they say? Happy wife, happy life. The Parasha, when you're married, is connected to the wife. The more you make her happy, the more she is content, the better chances you have in making money. So if that's the case, then there's no better example than Shabbat. Because Shabbat, who is she the wife of? Shabbat is the wife of Am Yisrael. Where do we see that? We know the famous Midrash, when Sunday had a partner and it was Monday, and Tuesday had a partner, it was Wednesday, and Thursday had a partner, which was Friday, and Shabbat had no partner. So he went up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and says, who's going to be my partner? You created all the days in twos, I'm left out. And Hashem says, well, your partner is going to be Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael, imagine the nation of Israel is married to a day. We're married to Shabbat. And a testimony to that is on Shabbat when we go to Shul. What do we say after Lechadodi? Boy kala, boy kala. Actually, it's boy chala, boy chala. There's no dagesh over there. Who's this bride? Shabbat is the bride. Who's the groom? Am Yisrael is the groom. So if the groom treats the bride properly, right? Happy wife, happy life. If you treat the Shabbat properly, then the Parnasah for sure is going to be taken care of. So the 7th day is a huge, huge day. Furthermore, you should know that keeping on this number 7 is a cyclical number. They say that if you notice, a lot of things in this world are in 7s. Like we said, Shabbat, Shemitah. You have, like we spoke about, the colors of the rainbow, the chords of music, the 7 heavens. All these things come in 7. Inside the Torah, that number 7 keeps repeating itself in many different places. Certain things get repeated 7 times, over and over again. We see it in a lot of different tzitutim. But what is this number 7 coming to tell us during the Omer? So it's very interesting. There's a pasuk in Tehillim that talks about a man's life. It says that a person will live 70 shana, ve'im begvurot 80 shana, and it says Robam is going to be Havel, ve'gas chish ve'naufa. It's going to feel like one day you're like a vapor that's passing by, like a fleeting shadow. It says usually a person lives for 70 years. If bigvurot, if he's really strong and he's really, stretching it, 80 years. And from this pasuk, we learn something very interesting of how we can tie in the Shemitah and the purpose of the number 7 in our lives, as well as the purpose of learning the Shemitah during the time of the Omer. So a man's life, typically, on an average, should be 70 years. If you live to 120, God bless. There's a Mishnah that talks about the different stages in a person's life. In this week's fifth parak of Pirkei Avot, it talks about a person when he's 10 years old, 20, 30, 40, 50, all the way to 100. Each stage what it signifies. But basically, a person does not get judged fully and receive punishment until the age of 20. Up until the age of 20, you still have some sort of leeway on how Hashem deals with you between your bar mitzvah and the age of 20, which is how many years? 7. After you get to the age of 20, how many years between 20 and 70? 50, right? What are we dealing in this week's parasha? The Yovel, the Jubilee, the 50. And within that is what? 7 years times 7 times. So he says, at the age of 70, stop. That's when you finish working. It's recommended a person should not work past 70. Because past 70, a person should just sit down and learn. Where do we see that? He says, remember, let's go back to that farmer. He was able to rest how many times between 20 and 50? 7 times. 7 times for when? For 1 year. And then after that, after he was able to rest 7 years, what does he go? He goes free. The Jubilee, at the age of 70, he's set free. No more working, now only studying. Why? Because you have to always understand that the Shemitah comes to tell us like this. Why are you leaving the land? Because the land belongs to God, not to you. When a person passes away, he doesn't take anything with him. As a matter of fact, it goes back to the ground. So Hashem does something very interesting. After 6 years of working on your land that you feel so connected to, that you wake up in the morning early and you go to sleep late just to create the living, just to grow the vegetation. And then he tells you at the 7th year, it's not. Anybody can go on your field. Anybody can take anybody from your field. You are not allowed to work on your field on the 7th year to show you that the land is mine. And what do you do during that year? During that year, you study. It's always to remind you, what's your purpose here? What are you doing here? Don't forget. Every year on the 7th year, I have to remind you of your spirituality, of your neshama, of what you're here to do. And after I've taught you that lesson 7 times in 50 years, after that, completely, you're yovel, you're set free. Just go and study no more. What we draw from this lesson is during the time of the Omer, don't forget that you need to have a Shemitah. That you have to have a time where you stop working and you start studying. And don't forget that while you're here, we have these cycles of 7 to remind us. When do we stop? So we said that this is on a yearly basis. What happens on a weekly basis? Shabbat. What do we do on Shabbat? We stop. What do? We rest. And how do we rest? We study. On Shabbat, after we take all the meals, and after we go and we pray and we sing, we spend time with family, you find that block of time when you're free, typically between 2 or 3 until Mincha, whenever it comes, you study. That's what it's for. It's to teach us that a human being, a Jew, must have this cycle of 7 in his life. On a weekly basis, Shabbat. On a yearly basis, it's all the Shabbatot that we keep. On a 7-year cycle, the 364, which is the Shemitah. And after 7 years of 7 years, when a person is 70, it's the Yovel, go free and do only that, and only busy yourself with that. Because at the end of the day, we have to take care of our neshama more than of the body. That's the lesson that we have today with the number 7. Shabbat Shalom.